What's up, everybody? My name is Grant Kemp from Creative Cashflow, helping you buy more houses. Today we are here on Grant Teach Me Something to talk about a topic that a lot of people ask questions about, have confusion about, that kind of thing, and that is the escrow account. How does the escrow account really work? It's one of those things that seems a lot simpler than it really is. Escrow analyses, and when do you replace the insurance policy in the escrow account, and all of that kind of stuff. So tune in, stay tuned in, keep watching. We're going to get through all of these questions. Comment, like, share. I'll see you on the other side.
Teach me something.
Welcome. What's up, Rai?
Hey, buddy.
How you doing?
I'm a little warm. That's why I didn't wear my sleek.
You've got that fancy jacket of yours.
I know. It's too fancy to not wear, but whatever. It's just a little warm for me.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening. This is one of those topics that I'm sure a lot of you are going to end up finding on the replay because you're searching through Google on how does the escrow account work? How do I explain escrow account to my buyer? All of that kind of stuff. So today we're going to focus on making your escrow correct-scrow and doing it correct.
If this is your first time watching, just be patient.
Yeah, just bear with me. You're in it for the long haul. Okay, so here's the thing. Escrow is a fairly simple idea, right? What escrow is, and the context of escrow, like Ryan, you always do a really good job of pointing out that there's multiple contexts for a lot of the phraseologies that we're using. So like escrow is one of those. So what are two examples of why we might say escrow that are two different things?
Well, one is, I think, and this is not where you're going, but my brain is going there, is a ton of people associate escrow and earnest money as the same thing. And it's not. But it is.
Right.
You know, it's one of those, it depends what context, what you're talking about. Because a lot of people I'm putting my money at escrow. Well, technically, you're putting your money in earnest in escrow or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so again, it goes back to what Grant was just saying is the context of it is everything, but at the same time, it means multiple things.
Right. So there's two major uses of escrow, okay? Escrow can be used to talk about like when you have opened a file in escrow at your title company. In other words, the title company is a escrow account, right? They have an escrow account, which is basically the definition, and I probably should have, if I was a smart person, I would have looked this up beforehand, what the definition of it. But escrow is essentially somebody's going to hold money that doesn't belong to them. That's really what escrow is, right? So if you think about escrow from a title company standpoint, well, what happens when somebody puts money into a deal, whether that's earnest money or the actual cash that's going to take to handle that deal? Well, the title company doesn't own that, but the title company owns the account that owns or that's holding that money until it gets put out to somebody else. So let's say I'm buying a house from Ryan, and I'm gonna put all my cash into the escrow account at Texas Title or whoever, and then Texas Title is saying we're just going to hold on to this money until all the paperwork gets signed, and then we're going to give that money to Ryan.
Before we go too far, I think we should go to Google. As Daniel will say, just Google it.
The Googles.
And really lean on, because we're not in college and we're not writing cited papers, we can use Wikipedia. So Tommy, let's pop over to Wikipedia and just see what escrow. Being an escrow is contractual arrangement in which the third party, the stakeholder escrow agent, receives a dispersed money or property for the primary transacting parties, most generally used with the plentiful blah, 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 blah. But yeah, so it's a third party arrangement to say, hey, let's not screw over the buyer, let's not screw over the seller,
right,
and we're going to hold the money.
Right. So
you're welcome.
Thank you for that. And by the way, I hadn't seen that graphic before, and I know that's selling me out for not watching on all the episodes. But just Google it. That is wonderful. That's beautiful. Okay, so escrow, exactly that. Money that's being held for somebody else. So the two contexts that we hear it is in title, but also in the mortgage, right? When we talk about a mortgage payment, we're talking about a PITI payment. That is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
You got me before I could say anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. So where do those taxes and insurance go? What account? I'm doing everything wrong with right. don't let you talk when it.
Well, that was the laughter there was because like he's asking me a question right as I'm drinking coffee. I love it.
So if I make my principal and interest, taxes, and insurance payment, the principal and interest, who gets to keep that?
Well, the principal and interest that goes to the lending institution.
Right, the lending institution.
That could be yourself. That could be the whatever.
Yes. And then the taxes and insurance, where does that? Who gets that?
Well, the
ultimately?
taxes would actually go to either your local, your state, your federal, and your insurance goes to your insurance company.
Right, exactly. So your bank, the mortgage company, is holding the taxes and insurance in escrow because that money belongs to the tax man, it belongs to the insurance man. So those are the very basics of escrow,
And
right?
another basic would be like if you are a landlord and somebody gives a security deposit, legally you have to hold that in escrow separated from, well, I'm not an attorney, but right?
Well, you don't have to hold it
But you know what I
separated
mean.
out, but you do have to reserve that for them, right?
Right,
It doesn't have
right.
to be in a different account
I
necessarily.
think a lot of people might do that just for best practices because as real
Yeah.
estate investors, we love to
spend
just
money
spend
that's in an account. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
no, I
like,
totally
I got
get
$10. Cool.
So, all right. So, what we're going to focus on today is we're going to be focusing on the TI aspect of escrow. I'm not the rubber band man. I'm not going to be focusing on the title part of escrow. There's some kind of pun there, title and TI being the first part of it. Anyway, I'm not going to focus on that side. What we're going to focus on is the taxes and insurance side of escrow, the escrow that goes to bank accounts. And how is that handled? So a lot of what we talk about is we're talking about owner financing a lot. I really like these creative strategies. I love Daniel's kick on you are not a wholesaler. I think that can apply to any strategy. You are not a landlord. You are not a wholesaler. You are not a subtour. You are not a this or that. You are a single family real estate investor. Have the tools in your belt to do what you need to do to make money in single family real estate. You know that I'm a huge fan of owner financing, which means that we're holding escrow for people because they're making PI/TI payments to us. So we have to hold that TI off to pay for taxes and insurance. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Make sense?
We haven't been talking about already?
Well, in the fact of going forward, I'm not going to address the title stuff anymore.
Got it.
It's only going to be about the taxes and insurance escrow account.
Yeah, because again, I think there's a lot of content on the interwebs of title and escrow and the title process. Hell, we've had full courses on the academy talking about title work and the title process and the escrow there. So I think this is niche-y.
It is.
Good.
It's niche-y, and it's something that a lot of people need to know about because I get these questions a lot from my students, from people. Like I was talking last night at a RIA club, a local RIA club. We had to spend 10 or 15 minutes answering questions on escrow. So here's the thing. You're going to run into a couple of questions that go along with your escrow account. Now, I am using the what's the word I'm looking for? Like my core of this conversation is coming off of, hey, we're going to sell some houses with owner financing. Somebody's going to owe us money. Now, when that happens, the big part of why we're allowed to do that, or I shouldn't say allowed, but what allows us to do that is we're going to have debt oftentimes underneath that, right? And that debt is oftentimes going to be to an institution.
Right.
A Bank of America, Wells Fargo, whoever.
Because essentially, most of your transactions are wraps.
Right. And even if you were going to buy a house with cash, even then, in more advanced stuff, I would recommend that you lend yourself the money and then wrap that. But regardless, what we're coming to is when you do owner financing, because of Dodd-Frank and because of some of the laws that we have, if you're charging the interest rate that you should be charging, you have to hold escrow for your buyer. In other words, you may on your mortgage only have to pay your PI payment, and then at the end of the year, you just have to come out of pocket with your taxes and insurance because your bank is not holding escrow for you. That is not the case in this world. That is not the case with seller financing because if you are charging what's called a higher priced mortgage loan, which is what you should be charging,
Right.
you must hold escrow for them. The confusion occurs because let's take an example. Let's say that I buy Ryan's house subject to, okay? Ryan, what's your payment to the bank?
$1 million.
Okay, so Ryan has a $1 million a month payment because his house is ballin', because he is the rubber band man. And let's say that of that, $200,000 is going to escrow because insurance and taxes are pretty expensive, right? So every month I have to so I'm going to buy this house subject to, and every month I'm making that payment, and $200,000 of that is going to taxes and insurance. Now, part of what's going into his escrow account at Wells Fargo or Bank of America is also most likely a PMI or MIP payment. Can you tell me what that is?
No.
Okay. So
Thank you. No, I could probably guess,
mortgage
but I don't
insurance.
want to. Yeah, I didn't
mortgage
want to.
insurance, right?
Yeah.
So, do you know why a mortgage insurance would be on a mortgage? And this is why we want to have this conversation, because this is not something that everybody just inherently knows. And let me just let me cut to the end of the story here. I want you to pay very close attention to what we're about to talk about here, because I lose on an annual basis somewhere between $94,000 and $98,000 a year that I should have been making because I did not pay attention to the PMI and the MIP that was in my underlying liens for the first year of my career. It took me 1 year before I realized, oh, holy crap, I've been missing this part of the escrow account the whole time, that had I not been missing that, my income would be at about another $100,000 a year. That's why this is so important.
Yeah, I'm not even going to take a guess.
Okay, so mortgage insurance happens when somebody buys a house and they have less than like 20% of a down payment. Okay? So what happens is the banks say, look, I will lend you this I'll lend you on this property. You want to buy it? That's cool. You want to do an FHA loan? That's cool. What means you've got to give me 3.5% or 2.5% down. Is it 2.5? I think 3.5. I don't know. We'll say 3.5 for an FHA loan. Well, that means that's a pretty high LTV.
Oh, loan to value. I know that one.
Yeah. That's a pretty high LTV. And so the banks, to protect themselves, say, look, we'll give you the loan, but you also are going to have to pay for this insurance policy called MIP. That is, MIP.
And that stands for?
Mortgage Insurance Premium.
Got it.
That says every month you're going to be paying $50, $100, or $150, whatever. And what that does is that ensures the bank that if you ever stop paying, they actually have an insurance policy taken out where they're going to be. That's where I was going to
go, because it sounded like some kind of their security instrument is that they could get their money back because they could foreclose on the house. But it would only make sense, now that we've talked about it a little bit, that they would have an insurance policy against that to where even if they do have to foreclose, they're going to collect money to help with the legal fees and just the vacancy fees. And now going back to, well, would a bank have a $15 an hour person be in charge of their property and not really care about getting off the books? Well, if they've got an insurance policy, that answers a lot of questions I've had for years.
Sure.
They don't care.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. And there's, there's some behind the scenes stuff going on where the government is kind of lording over, like, hey, remember when we saved you? You need to keep these loans. That's happening a lot right now too. Anyway, so this mortgage insurance premium is brilliant on their side, because they're saying, look, I'll take your down payment, I'll give you a house, but I'm going to get an insurance policy that says if you don't pay me, that I'm going to get made whole by this insurance policy. And guess what? You have to pay for it. It's brilliant. I haven't figured out a way for us to use mortgage insurance on our side yet to our buyers, but I think that would be a really cool thing for us to be able to charge them. I just don't know how we can do that yet. So there's MIP and PMI. Both are mortgage insurance. The only difference is one stands for mortgage insurance premium, one stands for private mortgage insurance. MIP goes on FHA loans, a government-backed loan. PMI, private mortgage insurance, is on non-government-backed loans like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Even though they're owned by the government, it's kind of a shady, but that's what it is, right? So if you have MIP, if you have PMI, basically the same thing on both. It's both a mortgage insurance, just called a different thing. PMI is going to be on non-government-backed. MIP is going to be on government-backed.
And let me just jump in real quick, because a lot of this stuff is, like we talked about at the very beginning, that a lot of this viewers will be probably from searches on Google and the replay. Whether you're watching right now live with us, or if you are watching in the future, drop the comments in the live chat, drop them in the comments right now, drop them in the YouTube comments later, and we're very good about answering those questions. We're going to answer all the questions today at the end, just so we can, keep the train of thought. But definitely drop your comments. I mean, we see people
we like
saying
interacting.
Hi,
we
hi,
really want to make
Elizabeth,
sure that you guys are getting it. And like in the podcast, do we have a link to the YouTube in the podcast description notes?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be nice. So I'm gonna commit us to something because my mouth is too big. If you're listening on the podcast, hopefully maybe we'll have a link to the YouTube in the description, so you can click on it there.
That's a good idea.
And then go comment and ask your questions, and we'll get to it. So please communicate with us. So that's one of the big parts of it. Now, why am I losing money on a monthly basis, or on a? Because
you're paying it, and it's money going out that you're never. never. Because you're an investor, you're never going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to actively try to lose money.
Right.
So actively trying to lose money would be allowing yourself to be foreclosed on. So you paying a fee, you're just paying fees that you know will never be used.
Right, you're paying a fee that will never be used, and the big kicker here is that we are not allowed to pass that fee to our buyer. Okay, so if you buy a house subject to, and what I did, my mistake that I made at the beginning here, right, was I looked at my cash flow by saying, okay, what is my total payment to the bank, and what is my total payment coming in from my buyer? That should be my cash flow. Because I don't care what's happening in the taxes or in the escrow account because they're going to be paying it. I'm sorry, I take that back. I looked at the PI payment from to the bank and the PI payment from my buyer, and that's all I was comparing on my cash flow because I didn't care about the escrow account because the buyer pays the escrow account. I don't care what's going on in there. I don't care what those dollar amounts are. The mistake I made was not accounting for the fact that PMI and MIP are part of that escrow account, and I cannot pass that fee to my end buyer. So if I
Is that just because it's not legal?
Yeah, it's a legal thing.
Just a random thing?
It's a legality issue. So if I only look at the principal and interest that's being paid to the underlying lien and the principal and interest that's coming in and ignore my escrow account, well, that might show that I'm making $250 a month. But then whenever we actually go through and do this deal and do the wrap, well, my buyer's paying their payment. Yes, they're paying taxes. Yes, they're paying insurance. That's what's in the escrow account. But guess what? There's another thing in that escrow account that's going for $75 a month.
Right.
And guess what? I can't pass that on to my buyer. So guess what? I'm not making $250 a month. I'm making $175 a month.
And I might as well say a guess what as well. Is on one or two houses, you may not notice that.
Right.
But when you have, when you multiply it out, it could be significant.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you have a ton of houses, $80,000, $100,000 a year.
It took me about 8 months of not realizing that to lose $95,000 a year in income. That sucks.
Quick, everybody do math. How many houses does Grant have?
Well, that was my first year. So then what we did, so if I had realized that, like now we account for that and we understand, because the problem is if you run an analysis on a deal, like my minimum cash flow that I want per door now is $150 per door, right? Mm-hmm. So if I run analysis on a deal.
Is that after that fee or before the fee?
That's after the fee.
Okay.
But what I was doing at the beginning is I would run that analysis and I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm making $150 a month, let's do the deal. Well, sometimes PMI or MIP can be like $130 a month.
Now, that PMI, MIP, is that standard on every single contract, or is that it depends on who you're doing business with?
Well, it's a great question. So that PMI and MIP happens on any loan where they do not put more than 20% down on the loan.
Got it. So when you're doing a subject to deal from the acquisition side, that's one of the things you need to pay attention to is, did they put 20% down, and is that little bylaw? Because I can imagine when you're in the acquisition, because I know how we are when in the acquisition. You're like gunslinging, and you'll take care of it later. Let's do it. But paperwork typically is kind of a second thought, afterthought.
Well, and that's one of the things. That's why we're here, right? One of the things we want to train you into is what are the slippery slopes that you guys can fall on, and learn from our mistakes. Learn from the guys. Guys, my name has been on about 1,400 HUDs. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen mistakes. I've seen how to do things the right way. You are smart for listening and watching this to understand that you can learn some things like this to where you don't have to look at the end of the year and be like, oh my gosh, I'm losing $95,000 a year. I'm such an idiot. So pay attention to that. Now, this is fortunately fairly simple to find in that when you look at a mortgage statement, it'll show the breakdown of the payment typically at the bottom of that statement. It'll show what's happening for principal and interest. It'll show what's happening for taxes and insurance. And it'll usually have a separate section for escrow that shows the disbursements that are happening, and you will see PMI or MIP inside of that. But either way, my staff calls every bank of every property that we're purchasing and double checks whether or not MIP or PMI is on that loan.
Now, is that, and I might be getting ahead of ourselves, but is that negotiable?
It is not.
So there's no you got to get rid of it, or there's no manipulating the numbers. Right. It's just, if it's 75, you're paying 75.
Yep, exactly. And now, the thing about it is, and this is where some of the laws get weird. Like, there's a couple of things in the law that are I just don't understand why they do it that way. Like, I don't
AOC, baby.
I don't see why. So, like, my car, this is another kind of tangent example. My car beeps at me. If I open the door before I turn it off, it dings at me. Why would I ever care that the door is open before I turn it off. Like, why? What logic ever even made that a thing, right? So there's certain things in the law that are that way. I'm like, why would they ever do? For instance, one is when you are, and we'll get into this in one of the next sections, when you are closing on a deal with your end buyer, you are allowed to pay by law, or allowed to charge by law 1/6 of 1 year in escrow for reserves. Why would they not just say 2 months? When is a year ever not going to be 12 months, right? Why would the law say 1/6 of 1 year? So it's kind of weird. Here's another example that is applicable to what we're talking about right now, which is with PMI and MIP, if you put 20% down, you don't have to have it, right? So what happens when you buy the house and you've paid the house down, and now all of a sudden you're down to that 80% LTV mark? When you get to your 80% LTV mark, you can call them and have them drop off the PMI or MIP.
At 80%?
At 80% of the LTV. And there's some caveats there I'll get into in a second.
That's so random, though, because if they're not going to put it in there when it's a 20% down, why would they wait? Again, there's no rhyme or reason to why.
It's the same thing, right? So they want to be in an 80. They say we're comfortable without having PMI as long as we're in at 80% of the LTV, right? Either way. So either you give 20% down.
Then I was thinking in terms of you had paid off 80%.
No. You've paid off 20%.
So once you've gotten to 20% paid on the loan,
you can call the bank
and say, hey, take this thing off.
Exactly.
Now, will they take it off automatically, or do you have to call?
That's the part of the law. Good question. Great segue, Rai. That's the part of the law that's silly, is you can call them at 80% and have them drop it off, or it will automatically drop off at 78%.
So they're going to get 2%.
Yeah. Why doesn't it just automatically drop off at 80?
And let's just think about it. How long will it take? How many months is 2%?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's many. Many money. Me say many, many money. Fuji's, anybody?
So here's what I'll say is
I got my
like,
TI reference and my Fuji's reference today.
If you're just joining in or you're listening and you don't really understand the impact of what we're talking about a significant amount of money when you think about the long run and when you multiply it by volume.
Right.
1 or 2 houses, you're probably never going to notice. A multitude of houses, you are going to notice. So Tommy, if you could drop another golden nugget.
Tommy controls the golden nuggets.
He loves to be told when to drop nuggets. But yeah, the fact that
I already dropped one for it.
I know you did. That's why I did it again. But the fact that A, it stays there, or it's going to be there if it's under, if it's over 80%.
Right.
And B, it'll automatically drop off at 78%. But you have a 2% window that you could call in and be like, hey, take this off.
Exactly. And that can be a significant amount of money.
That to me could be a fire nugget because, again, if we're talking about something we've never even talked about here, and most people might not even know about it, I mean, that's a lot of money in volume.
So let me do some quick math here. And actually here, what I can do is I can show you guys the math that I'm doing just for giggles, right? So I'll bring up my wonderful 10B2 calculator. Let's say that we've got a $150,000 loan for 30 years at 4.5%. That's what the loan is that we're taking over on. So what is 80%? 150,000 times 0.8. So we want to see when we would get down to a balance of 120. So let's see how long that takes us to get to a balance of 120. That's our 80% mark. Okay. So we're basically at a payment of 121. Before we're going to hit that if we were just wait. So then if we do 150,000 and we look at the 78 mark, that's 117. So how many payments does it take us to get to 117?
You said 121 and 117? So that's 4,000.
So that would be payment 130. Okay, so it's not that many. It's 9 payments. But again, sometimes these payments are for like $140.
Yeah.
So that's $1,260 that you could have saved.
And if you have 100 properties, that's $100,000.
Right. Oops.
120, whatever.
$126,000. I don't know why I put that on the calculator, but I'm showing you guys.
But let's do a callback to buying, retire, whatever, do 1 house a quarter. 4 houses a year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's $5,000.
That's $5,000
in a 9-month period that you're losing by not calling in early. So you can stay on top of that, right?
Right.
So that's kind of a silly part about how PMI and MIP works. Now, again, like I said, there's some caveats to MIP and PMI about getting it dropped off. I'm not going to go into that today because it's different. Like calling in and getting it dropped off from an FHA loan is a little bit different than getting it dropped off on a conventional loan, and the requirements of what can allow you to drop that off change on both. But that's a topic for another day. So I'm not going to go into that side. My topic for today is to try and teach you what you guys need to be looking out for, which is PMI. And guys, creativecashflow.com, I'll give my shameless plug right now. I do a weekly live Q&A every Monday night where we can go over these kinds of things in details. If you do have extra questions on that we're not able to get to today, check me out at creativecashflow.com. So again, very important when you're doing volume to make sure that you're keeping on track of your MIP and PMI. We're going to take a break. And then when we get back, we are going to be addressing some of the other parts of the escrow account, like the insurance policy. That is a big, big, big thing, especially in the sub-2 world, but just in general with escrow. How does the insurance policy work? Why is it that we're asking somebody to bring a 1-year prepaid insurance policy, but we're still charging them every month for insurance? Well, they just paid for 1 year. So we'll talk about that right on the other side of this.
Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
You want to buy more houses. Here's Dar and his wife after only 2 weeks of being my mentor student. And here's Brady after paying attention to all our online videos and attending all the live Q&As. You want to buy more houses? 3 steps. Sign up at creativecashflow.com/memberships, watch all the videos, attend the live Q&As, and then send me a photo with you and your sweet, sweet new contracts. creativecashflow.com, helping you buy more houses for one low price of only
All right, and welcome back. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now, we talked about PMI and MIP and the danger of not paying attention to that, the danger of possibly losing $100,000 a year. I think we spend a lot of Grant Teach Me Something of be like Grant. Here's one way, don't be like Grant. Don't do what I did and ignore those things. Now, one of the items that you are going to run into, and actually I'm going to put this, I'll start drawing some things out for you guys again here.
Grant drawings.
Grant,
While
draw
he's
me
doing that, I do
something.
want to just point out, Kaylee Ryan, what kind of calculator is that? It's the 10V2, and it's something that Grant, he uses daily, and
Yes.
then he actually has a course in the Propelio Academy to talk about the 10V2.
Yeah, please go to propelio.com/academy right now. Not right now. I keep saying right now. Right after you get done with this, go to propelio.com/academy. Sign up. It's Propelio has an unlimited scholarship fund, and they are giving you all a scholarship into this academy of massive information. My module up there is for seller financing right now. It's a full-blown 36 series. About 16 hours worth of information. One of the classes on there is the 10B2 calculator. I get tons of feedback from people who say, Grant, holy crap, this calculator alone is changing my life. Thank you for that lesson. So go watch on how to do that calculator because it's going to blow your mind on how much money you can make.
Speaking of mind blowns, Gregory Ballard on YouTube, mind equals blown.
That's my favorite state of mind.
Being blown?
Blown. So
And
anyway,
back. we didn't plan that. It just happened.
all right, so here is a question that you are going to get from your buyers, okay? Again, I'm skipping a lot of preliminary knowledge about owner financing because we've done 60 videos, and there's so go back in time on Grant Teach Me Something, go to the Propelio Academy, learn how to do the owner financing from those things. We've got topics specifically on that. I'm going to assume some certain knowledge here when I'm saying we're talking about, hey, we're owner financing a property to somebody, which means we're going to sell it to them for $100,000. They're going to give us a $10,000 down payment. We're going to finance them $90,000 for 9.5% for the next 30 years. When you are closing with that buyer, one of the requirements that you need to have is that they come with a 1-year prepaid insurance policy at the closing table. Okay? So they need to go out to their insurance company And the insurance needs to look a very specific way. Again, Grant Teach Me Something, episode 30, 33, something like that. We do a full-blown exercise on what insurance needs to look like. So go watch that one so that you can learn the details of insurance. But they need to have 1 year prepaid, which means that because we need to make sure that if anything happens in this next year, house burns down, hailstorm comes, tornado hits, whatever. Can you tell we're from Texas? Hail and tornadoes. That there's going to be insurance in play.
Real quick, because we're talking about revisiting the insurance for a full year, does the MIP, that's just monthly, that's not a yearly thing.
Correct. The way that MIP and PMI is calculated, it's calculated as a percentage. I think it's 0.5% generally. It changes per person as a risk tolerance to the human. It's about 0.5% from the original loan balance.
And is it
an annual premium?
And is it a flexible thing, or is it just a
fixed.
hard fixed?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a fixed one. But that's a good question because, like, we know insurance and taxes change every year, right?
Right.
So, yeah, good question. So, on the insurance policy, you're going to ask your borrower, you're going to say, hey, I need you to go buy a 1 year prepaid insurance policy. So, go spend the $1,300 to prepay for the entire next year worth of insurance. And then your payment starting next month is going to be $1,500. And of that, or I'll say $5,000. I'm sorry, $2,000. I mean, $4,000. I mean, $6,000. I mean, whatever. $2,000 a month is their PITI payment. The reason I say that is so that we can say, like, $500 goes towards principal, $500 goes towards insurance, $500 taxes, $500 interest. It just makes things easier on us. So we're going to tell them, go pay for a full year, and then your payment starting next month is going to be PITI. And a common question rebuttal that you're going to get from them is, whoa. Why am I having to pay every month for insurance when I just paid for the full year? Right?
Right.
So that has, through experience, I've been able to kind of figure out how to most succinctly explain that to your borrower, and I call it my hoagie example. And this is why. So I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to draw this for them, exactly like I'm drawing it for you right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw them a little picture. And that picture is going to look like this. Thank you. I'm like, stall. So what we're asking you to do, and I'm just going to basically give you the pitch that I'm giving them. What we're asking you to do is we're asking you to go out and buy an insurance policy today, which is, let's say, whatever, January of whatever, 2020, which we're not there. And that insurance policy is going to last all the way until January of 2021, right? So that's what you're paying for today. And let's say that insurance policy costs $1,200, okay? So that coverage that you have just paid for gets you covered all the way from today to 1 year from today. Mm-hmm. But what's going to happen in 1 year from today is your insurance company is going to come back and say, hey, we need to re-up for the next year to get you until Jan of 2022. We need you to pay another $1,200. We're holding off on the change in escrow right now, just giving them the example. So because of that, what we're going to do is on a monthly basis, we are going to take 1/12 of whatever that insurance policy costs and put it in a savings account. So each month that you make your payment, we're going to be taking $100 here, $100 here, $100 here. For 12 months, we're going to take part of that payment and put it into a savings account so that at the end of the year, we can take all the money that was in that savings account and use it to pay for the re-up of that escrow.
Yeah, my light bulb moment was about 3 months in, because I'm going, because we don't trust them to be able to hawk up a full $1,200 in next January.
Right.
Because if they're doing an owner finance, they're most likely in a position where maybe they're not the best with finances. A lot of assumptions, but at the same time, you want to secure yourself in the fact that if they burn their house down on January 1, 21, and they don't have insurance, well, you're screwed.
Well, and it's not even necessarily that they're a high-risk borrower. Like I have taxes and insurance are escrowed with my mortgage, right? Now my mortgage is a sub-2 mortgage that I bought, but even like when I bought my FHA house, my first property, they required escrow. So it's not necessarily always that it's just
And-
like,
and a
oh,
good
that these
thing,
guys are, you know, it's just most mortgages. Like
It's a risk. It's a risk
90+% mortgages out there are going to require escrow.
Yeah.
90, 95. It's very rare that they're not going to require escrow. Basically, if you put 20% down is when they're not going to require escrow. So think about how many people actually put 20% down on a house. Very few. Everybody else is required escrow. So this is my hoagie example, and the reason I call it that
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is like, I don't get it.
is because this kind of looks like a hoagie right here. Tommy. Thomas is just back there
Can you-
like
can you-
giggling at me.
These right here. What?
But what I have found is that that picture most succinctly describes to them why I'm asking them to pay for 1 year, and then I'm asking them to pay on a monthly basis. Now, then once we get that light bulb moment, which you had, right, which they will similarly have at that point, is we'll go back to the drawing board and we'll say, okay, well, here's the thing. In the real world, we understand that taxes and insurance are going to fluctuate on an annual basis. I would love to act like they're going to go down for you. They're not going to go down. Taxes and insurance almost always go up. So next year, what's going to happen is they're actually not going to ask, if we could go back to the drawing board here, they're actually not going to ask for, Tommy, can we go back to the drawing? They're actually not going to ask for this $1,200 because the insurance is probably going to go up. They might ask for $1,500. Okay? Now, I want to be really clear to you, O borrower of mine, that your deal with me is a fixed rate mortgage. I am not changing my payment, but these guys, the insurance and the taxes, I have no control over that. That payment that they're going to ask me to give them in 1 year will probably be more. Okay? And so at that point in time, and that's all I need from the drawing on that. And so from that point in time, we're able to let them know that escrow is going to change, right? That's one really good way for us to bring that topic up to them. And let them know that at closing, we are going to require 2 months of escrow reserves. Okay? So what I mean by that is whatever that, so like in this example, it was $100 a month that we were going to be taking from them to go, for insurance. And then taxes might be, let's say, $125 a month, right? So we're getting $225 every month from this borrower for taxes and insurance. I am going to implore you guys, here's the other don't be like Grant. When I started this, I was not doing this escrow reserve. I'm like, let's keep their closing costs down. Let's not, there's no reason. And then the end of the year came around and I personally had to fork out $50,000, $60,000 of my money to cover the difference between what we had collected in escrow accounts and what these insurance companies were actually asking for and what the taxes guys were actually asking for.
Okay, so you pay the lump sum of all that because, again, that volume,
right?
$50 here, $50 there, multiplied. But isn't it back on them to repay you?
It is. It is. But I had to come up with $50,000, $60,000 of my cash
because you didn't want to miss.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that our tax people are being paid.
Because you don't want to lose the house.
You don't want to lose the house. Taxes are a super lien, meaning that if a tax lien arrives, it actually supersedes any other liens. We all know, like, what determines a lien position?
When it's filed.
When it's filed. That's the only thing that determines lien position. So you would think if somebody gets behind on taxes and they have a tax lien pop up, well, that's a subordinate lien. Well, taxes are a very specific type of lien called a super lien, that regardless of when it is filed, it automatically becomes first lien position, which means if you're a mortgage holder and your person paying you the mortgage does not pay their taxes and they get a lien filed, they might only be $5,000 behind on taxes. A lien gets filed and then that lien doesn't get paid and that lien forecloses, you lose your house. So the flip side of that is tax lien purchasing is a viable way to buy houses. You can lend people on their taxes, and then if you have to foreclose on them, it wipes out the mortgage. So you might get a $500,000 house for $20,000 because you gave a $20,000 tax lien. Again, topic for another day. But teaching you things that you may, my job is to open your mind. My job is to give you the ideas behind what can happen and then show you how that happens in deeper dives through creativecashflow.com, through the Propelio Academy, that kind of stuff. So here we are. And we ask them for, at closing, they need 2 months of escrow reserves. So we are going to say you need to pay for 1 year prepaid insurance policy. And at closing, you need to give me 2 months worth of escrow that we're just going to hold in the escrow account because at the end of the year, the dollar amount's probably going to go up, right? They're probably going to need more taxes. They're probably going to need more insurance. And that is going to be the buffer money we use to cover this new amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. So that is how you handle the insurance side and the closing cost side of the insurance that's going on, okay? So I'm splitting this up into sections. We're about to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the taxes and we're going to talk about the escrow analysis, and then we're going to kind of hit some questions.
Before we do that, I do have one quick question. And this is going to be like one of those very, very, very niche-y, probably not likely ever going to happen.
Okay.
That said, so if you have this money in escrow, which is it's for something else, but essentially it's not your money.
Right.
And they refinance or they sell the house. Does that money go back to them?
It transfers to the new to the new lender. That's a good question too. So like the question being, we've been collecting escrow for 8 months on this house, and then they refinance their mortgage. Well, when they refinance, we've got money that's not ours.
Right.
That money needs to transfer to the new borrower. Similarly, like if they sell your note, the escrow balance transfers. It's kind of like if you have a deposit on your tenant and then you sell your house and you have to transfer that money to the new landlord. Right. Very similar. It's escrow. It's not your money. Now, here's another niche-y thing that's cool about it is that you're legally allowed to hold this escrow dollar amount in an account that produces interest for you. So you can actually have escrow money in a savings account that's producing interest, however small that might be, but that interest you get to keep. So
more is still more.
More is still more, right?
That's a Ryan Harper quote for you there. More is still more.
I love it. So again, we've kind of split this up. Again, get your questions in. Make sure that you're making the comments, thumbs upping, liking. Guys, and here's the other thing too. If you feel like you're having provided value to you, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to Propelio's YouTube channel. Subscribe to CreativeCashFlow.com's YouTube channel, because we have a stick up our butt about helping you buy more houses. That's what Creative Cash Flow is all about. I want to do everything I can to help you buy more houses, and this is part of that. Buying more houses, making more money in it, this is all part of that. So again, we did our first segment talking about the MIP and the PMI that's in escrow. We've done our second segment talking about the insurance and how you're going to handle the closing costs and insurance and how you're going to describe insurance to your buyer whenever they're coming in and purchasing that property from you. When we come back, we're going to talk about taxes, which is a very simple side of this thing, and we're going to talk about the escrow analysis. And we're also going to lump into that, if we are buying sub-2 and we are selling with a wraparound mortgage, when do we transfer like our new insurance policy into the escrow account at the underlying mortgage, worrying about due on sale clause, all of that kind of stuff, to make sure that things are done right. So guys, stick around and we'll see you on the other side.
Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites. Access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
You want to buy more houses? Here's Dar and his wife after only 2 weeks of being my mentor student. And here's Brady after paying attention to all our online videos and attending all the live Q&As. You want to buy more houses? 3 steps. Sign up at creativecashflow.com/memberships, watch all the videos, attend the live Q&As, and then send me a photo with you and your sweet, sweet new contracts. creativecashflow.com, helping you buy more houses for one low price of only
All right, welcome back. Okay, so we've talked about 2 of the items that are in escrow, insurance and PMI. The third item that goes into the escrow account is going to be your taxes. Taxes are very simple. Right? Taxes are taxes.
Right.
Property taxes are property taxes. You don't have any kind of control over what's happening over that, other than if you want to talk about property tax, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you tell them that your house isn't worth what they think it's worth. Protest.
Oh,
when you've got
I was like, huh?
property. Yeah, Ryan's like, what do you say? Property tax protest, that kind of thing. I mean, there's other side on
and
that.
be on the lookout. We've got Wesley Snipes going to be teaching a tax course.
Wesley Snipes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Propelio. Okay, that's a joke. Oh, might be a niche joke if you don't know who Wesley.
It's all right.
Snipes is.
I've already thrown in a couple of those. Okay, so taxes, you're not going to really do much about that. Now, the reason I'll bring that up is that they do get paid once a year, right? You do have that reserve in there. When the purchase happens, like say you're buying a house subject to, your seller will have been paying the escrow account for a while, which has been paying their taxes, their insurance, their escrow. Now your seller's insurance policy from sub 2 is still in that escrow account. When we purchase the property, part of our contract says that, because technically what should happen, is that escrow account gets closed out and the seller gets the money, but then the seller has to give us that money because it's not their money, and then we put it back into an escrow account. So part of our contracts say that we're just going to leave the escrow account alone in a subject to transaction, and we're just going to let that stay, and we're going to continue paying that, and we are going to tell them explicitly that if there is a refunded amount in the escrow, because sometimes insurance is going to be like we've held too much in reserve, but sometimes insurance does go down. Like I got a refund check from my insurance company for $400 last week or 2 weeks ago because our insurance policy did go down. We explicitly say if there's a refund, that does not go to you. That goes to us. That's a contractual agreement.
That goes to you or goes back to the escrow?
Goes back to us. If there's an overage in the escrow account, so in other words, like remember how we were saying we're going to collect for 12 months and we're going to use that money to pay the new amount that's asked for. Right? So what if we collected $2,000 over this 12 months, but then the bill to the tax man and the bill to the insurance company in that next bill is really only $1,700?
Right.
Well, we've got $300 too much. So the bank is going to reimburse that. They're going to send that check back out and say, hey, you paid into the escrow account more than you needed to. Part of our contract with our seller says, yes, that's going to be a check written to you, but we're going to cash it and we're going to keep it.
But and here's where I'm struggling though. That $300 is just, it goes to the Bank of Grant Kemp to go bowling, right?
Right.
It's not going back to the future escrow?
Correct. You can opt to do that. You can opt to say, I'm going to go ahead and cash this, and I'm just going to throw it back into the escrow account so that I have a reserve for next year, which is, by the way, kind of the smart way to do that. But they have to give you that escrow amount back. They have to reimburse that to you, and they're like, here you go. You paid too much over this last year. The smart thing to do is say, that's really cool. Cash the check, and then put it right back into that escrow account and say, I just want you to keep that in there because what if my insurance and taxes go up next year?
Maybe I'm confused, though, because I'm looking at Grant Kemp, the homeowner, but I'm also looking at Grant Kemp, the investor who's doing the mortgage wrap. So if I've got Joe Smith, who's your end user buyer, and they gave you $2,000, not you, but they gave you $2,000 for escrow to pay for the insurance, pay for the taxes, pay for.
See, you just said buyer. I've been talking seller. That's where your confusion, I think, is. So let's put some names to it.
Right,
okay?
because my thing is like the $300. To me, it's like, how does that go to you, the investor?
Right, because you said buyer and I'm saying seller. So let's put names to it, right?
Yes, please.
So Ryan is selling a house, subject to Grant the investor.
And then once we ink that up, I'm out of the equation.
So you're out of the equation.
Right.
Well, what if I buy this house on month 8 of the year, and Ryan has paid too much into the escrow account?
I see what. Now I'm like, well, that's just a negotiating from an acquisition side point.
Right.
In those 8 months worth of whatever, if there is an overage, it's so pennies on the dollar that somebody who's selling the house, they're probably not going to notice anyway. They're just glad to be out of the situation.
But it can be several $100s. So here's my little nugget for you guys of just like I told you, don't lose money in these little ways. Here's a way that I'm going to say, here's a little way for you to make money.
Yeah.
Is to just say, hey, when this comes in, this escrow reimbursement, yeah, you're the one that paid it, but contractually we're going to say that you're okay with me keeping
now, is that
money.
just like a one-pager in your sub-2 packet?
It's 4 lines in a paragraph of the sub-2 packet. It's a very quick little, hey, there may be an overage in the escrow account. We're both agreeing that the investor buyer gets to keep
and
that.
And I'm assuming because there's a power of attorney and all that, will the check go to them or
it's
does it go?
It's going to be written to them, but we, using our power of attorney, change the mailing address at the sub-2 or at the sub-2 bank, the Wells Fargo or whatever, to be our account. So that it's going to be in their name, but it's
so the check will be
to
Joe Smith, and because you have a power of attorney in this situation, you could be like, yes, this $200, $300 check that was going to Joe Smith
we're just going to endorse
is actually
going to
go to Ryan Harper, investor.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
And part of that power of attorney explicitly has them initial off that we have the right to do that with insurance checks.
Got it.
So there's your little FYI.
Yeah, it took a second to get there because I was thinking in terms of the other side where I'm like, wait.
And in that case,
a minute.
so let's continue that line in case anybody else is confused. So Ryan sells me the house. He paid too much, but we've agreed that I get to keep that overage. We don't do that with our buyer though, right? So our buyer, Joe, comes in and buys the house from us, and Joe pays too much. Well, we send Joe a check and say, hey, you paid too much. Here's your money back.
Yeah, the reason my face and my confusion was, wait, that doesn't sound. But from the acquisition side, from a seller standpoint, yeah, that makes total sense.
Right.
Because again, if you sell the property, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're out the door. You're not nowhere to be seen.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because we've got an insurance policy that's in play from Ryan, and then we're going to get a new insurance policy from Joe, our new buyer, right? There's going to be, most likely, oftentimes, there's going to be a gap in timing where I've bought the house from Ryan, which, by the way, invalidates the current insurance policy that he had. If we tried to make a claim from that point forward on that insurance policy, they're going to say, nope, sorry, Ryan doesn't own the house. He's the one on the insurance policy, so we're not going to cover that claim. So we, the investor, need to go get insurance, right, for this. So we're going to get an insurance policy. Again, go to my insurance video to focus more on that. I get a builder's risk policy, fully earned 6-month policy to cover us for this period. But I do not replace the escrow account, the insurance that's in the escrow account, because you actually send the you send the insurance policies to the bank and show them, hey, this is the insurance policy declaration page, which tells you that it's a $1,200 a year policy, and that's what allows the bank to know, hey, we need to hold back $100 a month for this, right? So they have it on file, what insurance is there, so that they know which insurance is being paid on. It's part of the mortgagee clause, that's why they know that. But I'm not going to tell the mortgage company about this builder's risk policy. So essentially, I'm going to be double paying on insurance for a couple of months because I'm paying the PITI payment to the bank, which includes an insurance payment, right? And I've paid for a builder's risk policy to cover me for this next 6 months while I'm rehabbing the property and finding my buyer, okay? The short of this, again, I don't want to get too distracted. The short of it is TDI, Texas Department of Insurance, only allows insurance companies to charge you for one insurance policy at a time. So when I find Joe the home buyer and we get his insurance policy in place, he goes and he pays for his 1-year prepaid insurance. That policy we are going to submit to the bank and say, I need you to remove Ryan's policy and put this new policy into the escrow account, okay? This new policy is $1,500. Ryan's policy was $1,200, okay? We follow so far? Mm-hmm. So we're gonna cancel Ryan's policy. The short side note is that here's another little tip for you guys, is that because of TDI only allowing, I made Dan Diaz a lot of money on this. Gancito had a conversation with him because he was double paying insurance for all his things, and I'm like, screw that, dude. Here's the thing, is you don't have to do that. I walked him through this, and I told him TDI actually only legally allows insurance companies only legally allows one insurance company at a time to be charging you. So guess what? You get to go to all of those other insurance companies and show them your new policy that you had in play, and they legally have to reimburse you whatever premiums you paid to them while you had another policy in place.
Okay, that's where I was going to get to, because I'm glad you said it. So if I'm doing a sub-2 deal, and let me just walk this back, and there's already insurance in place for Joe Smith, the seller. Mm-hmm. We keep Joe Smith in play, that insurance policy in play.
In the escrow account.
In the escrow account, and you're still paying that, whatever. You get your builder's policy, because again, if you're doing rehab to a house, there are some little nuances there. And all that stuff. And let's face it, insurance companies are very creative on ways not to pay you. So a builder's policy kind of negates a lot of that. You're still paying that, but you're still paying the escrow. Now, are you submitting the builder's policy yet? Or are you waiting until you have somebody else come in?
Yes. I don't want to submit that builder's policy because if due on sale is going to get called, it's going to get called from insurance changes and insurance being wrong. So we want to avoid, so I'm okay with double paying for this short period of time.
And then when you do submit, you say, oh, by the way, I also had this policy for the past 6 months.
So we're not going to tell the bank we had that policy for the last 6 months. We're going to tell Ryan's insurance company, hey, Ryan's insurance company, we need to cancel this insurance. And guess what? For the last 6 months, I've actually had another policy in place, so I need you to reimburse me all of the premiums that got paid to you.
And is that standard practice, or is that like pulling teeth?
Yes.
So both.
Yeah, you'll run into it both ways.
So what are some tips to maybe get around some of the, what are some nuances that,
I think
that might be very nichey, but I mean, there might be a couple nuggets there.
And it's something that I think, the short answer is you use your power of attorney. The long answer is that's too long of an answer, and I think we would reserve that for another episode. Because I want to be specific to what's going on in our escrow account on this one, so just trying to keep that focus on it, right? It is a good question because that is a pain in the rear, but I just think it would take too long to answer it. So let's get back to, we're going to replace in escrow, we're going to replace Ryan's insurance policy with our new buyer's insurance policy, which means when we get that new insurance policy, there's going to be mortgagees listed on that policy. The primary mortgagee is going to be the Wells Fargo, the Bank of America, whoever, which means that it gets submitted to them to say, hey, don't pay Ryan's Allstate anymore, pay Joe's, what's another insurance company? Who's James Jenkins with? What's his, he's independent now. I think, yeah, Farmers, right? That's right, yeah. So don't pay Ryan's Allstate anymore, pay James Jenkins's Farmers from now on.
I think James Jenkins might be Allstate.
No, he's Farmers.
Is it?
I remember because he looks like a farmer. He's got that like beard and the vest, and he always wears the. So.
People in Oregon do not care.
Well, no, he's nationwide.
Okay.
James Jenkins is and he's
There's your play.
There you go, James. So we're resubmitting there. Now here's the thing: is Ryan's insurance policy may have been $1,200 a year, but Joe's Farmers policy might be $1,500 a year. So the danger becomes if we just submit that to the escrow and we say replace Allstate with Farmers, the bank only once a year does an analysis of how much money should be getting collected in this account and how much money is being collected in this account. Only once a year do they do that. That act is called an escrow analysis. So here's the big thing that you guys need to know. Here's the big, you need to do this. I'm trying to find other ways to say it's a nugget without telling, because Thomas is the nugget master. I'm not controlling the nuggets. Here's the other big nugget. I'm just gonna say it. You need to call the bank after you get this new policy put in play, and you need to tell them, hey guys, we want you to run an escrow analysis, because they'll run it if you ask them. Otherwise, they're just going to wait every year, because remember how I said, like, at the end of the year, the number may go up, and you were like, yeah, but isn't that the responsibility of the buyer ultimately, right? Meaning that their payment changes for that next year to cover whatever the negative escrow amount was or the positive escrow amount was. If it's a positive escrow account, that means they paid too much money into it, and the bank is going to just cut a check to you and say, here's your money back. If it's a negative escrow amount, in other words, we collected $1,200, but we actually had to pay $1,500, they're going to pay it, but then they're going to collect that extra $300 over the next 4, 5, or 6 months from the buyer, or maybe even up to a year. They're going to say your payment should be $1,500. We're going to split the $1,500 up over this next 12 months, and I'll need you to slow me down if I'm getting confusing. Your new policy from, so right now we're 2019.
Right.
Let's use some numbers, right? So let's say that we had a policy in play from January of 2019 to January of 2020. And when we first get that policy, it's for $1,200. Okay, so we've collected $100 a month every month until January 2020. But then January 2020 rolls around, and Farmers Insurance says, now the policy's $1,500, okay? Well, so the new policy is gonna ask for $1,500. The bank is gonna go ahead and pay that $1,500, but they only collected 12, right? So there's two things that are gonna happen when they run this escrow analysis. A, they're gonna say, all right, well now we need to divide 1,500 by 12, and that's what we need to collect from 2020 to 2021. So that payment now, instead of being $100 a month, is going to be, what's 1,500 divided by 12, is going to be $125 a month. Oops, what did I do here? Stop. So now they're going to say, just by default, we need to collect not $100 a month, but we need to collect $125 a month. But you were also $300 negative on this account. So we are going to divide that by however many months, let's say 12. Oops. And that means that we need to collect an additional $25 just so that y'all can reimburse us
Right.
for the money we came out of pocket. Therefore, if your payment before was $100 a month for escrow, now it's $150 a month for escrow. 125 of that is just the default because now your policy is 100 or 1,500 instead of 12. And then 25 of that is because we had to fork up an extra $300 that you didn't pay us and you need to reimburse us for that.
But at least it's not like a lump sum payment.
At least it's not a lump sum payment. So they may actually require a lump sum. That is a option of a lender, right? I typically try to require that lump sum from my borrowers. When there's a negative escrow, I'm going to go to them and I'm going to say, hey, you owe me $300 because you were $300 short. And if they complain about it because they can't make that for whatever reason, if they don't have the money, because it's not always $300. Sometimes it's $2,000. Sometimes it's whatever. Then we will split that up, and we typically split that up for them in 4, 6, or 12-month increments, depending on whatever's going to be reasonable for what they can pay. Okay, so what we want to do is so does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
So what if it's reversed? What if Ryan's insurance policy to Allstate was $1,500,
And then it goes to $1,200.
but Joe the buyer's is $1,200? Well, if Joe, we're only charging, because we can't charge Joe based on what our underlying mortgage wants. We can only charge Joe for what his insurance is. So if I'm only collecting $100 a month from Joe, but I'm paying $125 a month to the escrow account because Bank of America or Wells Fargo has not yet realized that they should only be charging $100, they're still charging the $125 that they're used to charging, then I'm losing $25 a month.
But can't you, again, go back and call them up and say, hey, run the escrow
This
analysis?
is exactly why that's exactly why I'm drawing that out, is to
Got
say,
it, got it.
prevent yourself from losing money on a monthly basis by making it your procedure to always call and request an escrow analysis once the new insurance policy is in play. So here is my last, moment of aha for you, learn from my mistakes of, if you were collecting $100 and did not ask for them to do the escrow analysis, you might be paying $125. You might have thought you were making $150 in cash flow until you really go back and look at it and say, oh crap, I was only collecting $100, but I was having to pay $125 because I didn't ask for an escrow analysis, so I was losing $25 a month on that. If you call immediately and get that escrow analysis done, they will change the payments according to what the new insurance policy is, and now you're squared away to where what you're collecting from your buyer is what you're paying to your bank, and it's simply a pass-through amount of money, and now your cash flow truly is the difference between the PI that they're paying you and the PI you're paying your bank, less whatever MIP or PMI might be in play.
I think that's a lot of meat.
It's a lot of meat today.
Usually I'm saying, hey, where's the meat? But I think there's again, because this subject matter is very niche-y, but there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Just the MPI, MIP, whatever it's called, because clearly I pay attention. That's a huge thing. The fact that if it is over an 80% LTV deal, that you're going to be coming up with that. And then the fact that, just to recap, there is that 2% of play between the 80 and 78 where that's on you, and because they're just going to be like, aha, I get to keep the money.
Right.
But then also the call for an escrow analysis.
Escrow analysis, right. So I just
not going to get that in your, I don't know, I got nothing.
So today's episode, we've given you like 6 or 7 very small ways that you could very easily not see that you are either losing or could have made money. But guys, this stuff adds up, right? Just in that one mistake on MIP and PMI, I've lost $95,000 a year. I'm not even mentioning what could have happened if I wasn't doing my escrow analyses. I'm not even mentioning what could have happened if I was taking the Dancito-Gancito route and double paying insurance for all this time, right? I think I made Dan like 6 figures by just that one moment of, oh, holy crap, I can do this and get refunds for all those other guys. I think he got like 6-figure payday off of that because of the volume that's happening. Same thing with Mitch Steven. I talked about that with Mitch and Mike. They got a huge payday off of that too, right? So there's these so what I'm trying to say is if you didn't realize that was there, don't feel bad and be like, oh my gosh, I don't even realize all the things. Understand, Mitch is a beast. Dude's done like 1,500 houses in his own portfolio. Dan's doing a lot of houses. These are advanced guys in the industry that were still losing money off of these very small, niche-y things.
And that's why it goes back to, if you ever think that you know everything, slap yourself in the face. Because, just to give James another plug,
Right.
RJ Bates, who hosts the Titanium Tuesdays, he was at one of our events, and just talking about insurance with James, he managed to save himself $40,000.
Whew. I want to say $40,000.
That's significant.
Yeah.
So as far as the meat for the day, I think we've kind of wrapped that
Absolutely.
up.
So we're wrapping
well,
up.
what I'd like to do is let's hit up, because this is a pretty long episode for the day. Let's do another break, and when we come back, we'll hit up everybody's questions. So if you have questions, here's your chance to drop them in there. If you're watching on the replay, make sure you drop the questions, because we watch this stuff. So
Exactly.
Stick you on the other side.
See you on the other side.
Yeah. That's Grant's
you on the other
catchphrase.
side.
We'll be right back.
Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
You want to buy more houses? Here's Dar and his wife after only 2 weeks of being my mentor student. And here's Brady after paying attention to all our online videos and attending all the live Q&As. You want to buy more houses? 3 steps. Sign up at creativecashflow.com/memberships, watch all the videos, attend the live Q&As, and then send me a photo with you and your sweet, sweet new contracts. creativecashflow.com, helping you buy more houses for one low price of only
All right, so let's get over to YouTube. So if you got Orlando, when we were talking about the escrow, he's like, that's the step he missed. Calling to request an escrow analysis. That's why I got all these escrow shortage notices.
Yep.
So they do send notices.
Yeah, they will send notices because annually they're going to run their escrow analysis typically around April. And so they are annually going to run them anyway by default. And so if you let it go too long, then like Araldo has said, you're just going to get a bunch of notices of, hey, guess what? We were negative on your escrow account for a whole bunch of these accounts, and you're going to have to eat that out of your cash flow.
All right, the next question, what happens if you close a deal with an owner finance buyer and 2 months later an escrow analysis is scheduled and there's a shortage of, say, like $2,000? At that point, you have to pay that, right?
No, you can have it. So the bank will let you split that out over monthly payments. The escrow shortage, that's another gotcha that, again, we've given you a lot of gotchas today that people, these very niche things. You need to pay attention to that when you're acquiring your properties, sub 2. You need to pay attention to what their escrow balance is at that point in time, because if it is negative, that is not your buyer's responsibility. You're going to have to come up with that, and that's part of the decision process that you're making in acquiring that property, is that if they're negative $4,000, that's money that's going to have to come out of you or your buyer somehow. So if they're negative $4,000 and you're promising to give your buyer $5,000, maybe you only give your buyer $1,000 and you use $4,000 to come up with, to pay for their negative escrow.
Kaylee, do you get a power of attorney to speak with a mortgage company for an authorization to release loan docs?
Yeah, we get both the authorization to release and the power of attorney, and we file both with the banks and the insurance companies.
All right. We already answered this, but I'll just give you another. When can the PMI and MIP be dropped?
I will have to do a separate episode on all the caveats of this, because it's going to be different for conventional as it is for FHA. The general rule is basically once they get to 80% LTV and they've owned the house for 5 years, and there's not been a late payment in the last 12 months.
Ryan Chlebek? Sorry if I brutalized that. Just to clarify, PMI or MIP lasts till 80% of the house is currently worth, or 80% of the original loan month?
Ding, ding, ding. This is why we need to do a different episode. It depends. Our favorite answer.
Right.
But I'll put it again, generally, on conventional lending, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, you can do 80% of current appraised as long as there haven't been late payments. On FHA, it's 80% of the original loan balance.
Here's a props to Mr.
Y'all learning
Travion.
some stuff? Huh?
What's that?
Said y'all learning some stuff? Throwing crap at you guys
Trying
today.
to. Well, I'm just trying to rapid fire this thing.
No. I'm bragging on myself.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying, look at me.
I thought
know all the
I was just trying to give
answers.
Travion a shout out, and you just didn't like that.
No, please. I didn't hear that. I was just being douchey and bragging on myself.
Matt Smith, love the guy in the balloon.
Love the guy on
our
the balloon.
commercial.
Nice. Yeah, on the commercial.
And then Sonia gave you some love too.
Yeah, y'all like that commercial break? That was my new commercial. I made that myself.
Oh, well, there's 2 new commercials, yours and Trayvon's.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I made mine.
MIP, PMI only protects the loan provider, not the homeowner.
Right.
Yeah, okay. You're like, yeah, that's correct. Or, yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a period on that too. We're just making we're drawing that out to.
As the lender, can we charge PMI on the borrower?
I haven't found a way to legally do that yet, but I would like to. I haven't been able to spend a lot of time researching that. Right now, I don't see a legal way for us to do that. But I ultimately, yes, definitely want to be able to do that.
But depending on the lender and the time you've had the loan, you could request the loan to be waived. Mostly on conventional loans, FHA requires escrow account, from my knowledge. From RB
request the loan to be waived. I think he mistyped something there. You cannot request your loan to be waived.
That
would be super sweet.
Grant teach you something. How to get free housing.
Hey y'all, you know what? How about no?
Oh, there you escrow to be waived.
Correction. Escrow to be waived, not the loan. Yeah, but don't. Just don't. You're setting yourself up for failure. Why would you do that? I mean, so here's the thing: it's kind of like why people would get a credit card. They're like, well, we'll get a credit card because then we can get the points and we'll just pay it off every month. And then what happens? You don't, and it gets maxed out, right? It's the same thing here. Getting your taxes and insurance dropped off from the from the underlying lien. You have to collect escrow from your borrower because of the interest rates that we're charging. So then you have to be holding that money in escrow. If you drop the escrow payments from your bank, well, your bank was doing you a favor because they have the escrow account and they're handling the taxes and insurance getting paid. So they're doing work for you for free, which is really nice. And then you are just going to be too tempted to spend the money that's in that escrow account. And then at the end of the year, you have to pay what was due. It's just a bad idea. So I'm saying way too much to say don't do that. Just leave the escrow in place. Don't get it dropped off.
Anna, what happens when the mortgage is paid off with the insurance premium money?
Nothing. I mean, yeah. Am I being an ass? Like,
I don't know.
I mean, it's nothing. It's gone. It's an insurance. That's like asking me like what happens to all the money I've paid my homeowner's insurance when I pay my house off.
All right. Why would you not fluctuate their payment based on the insurance and tax increase? It will go up. When do you raise monthly?
No, yeah, you absolutely. He says, why would you not? I don't think I ever said that, and I hope I didn't say that by accident. Their payment goes up or down based on the taxes or insurance every year. We run our escrow analyses right after our banks run our escrow analyses, which is typically April-ish that we run those, because if we have a straight pass-through, if we're collecting the same amount from our borrower as we're paying to the bank because we have the insurance policy in the escrow account at the bank, they're doing all the work for us. They're going to run that analysis, and that's going to get turned in, and okay, that's what we need to adjust to our buyer. But there are people that we have like where we are holding the escrow because our bank did not have escrow, and on those we do have to run our own escrow analysis and show that to them, and we do that April-ish, and that's when we make our payment adjustments.
Ryan,
which, by the way, if I can just really quickly say, this is why for you guys, starting out who do not have large portfolios, just use a third-party loan servicer. These guys take care of all that stuff for you. Moat Servicing, Mitch Steven, and those guys down there. Moat Loan Servicing is going to be who I'm really recommending people use for that.
Ryan, for these escrow reserves, is this something that a loan servicing company will handle?
There you go. Yes.
Is that a good tie-in right there?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to fly through, make sure grants videos on. Yes, that's true. Yeah, you're only allowed. Sorry, guys. Sorry. That's why we do this at the end and not in the middle.
And while he's looking for that, I'm just going to give you another pitch here. Let's not forget that everything you see here in Propelio TV, the podcast, everything that you're looking for is made possible by Propelio.com having a vision of let's give some people the ability to buy houses. Let's give some people the leads they need, the websites they need, the CRM that they need. Everything that you need, including the education behind it, is made possible by Propelio.com. So guys, if you find value in this, go sign up for the free trial at Propelio if you haven't already. Test it out. And heck, guys, I'm going to go out and say, and this may not be a great copy point, but I'm going to say it. Even if you're not going to use the software, even if you're not planning on using it. If you don't think that a week's worth of free education and an academy that's available to you at propelio.com/academy is worth the $90 a month, I don't know what to tell you, right? Just reward these guys. I don't get a kickback from this, but just reward these guys for the effort and work that they're putting into putting this stuff in front of you. If you're not a member of propelio.com, become a member of propelio.com. It is worth every single penny. That is what makes this world turn around.
I really appreciate the plug, but I'm still stuck on, well, heck, guys. RB Armstrong, how does that work if you contractually make any changes to the loan?
We're not making any changes to the loan. We're making changes to the escrow account.
Sorry.
Sorry, guys. So while he's looking for the next one, I'll give my plug, creativecashflow.com. So creativecashflow.com, guys, check it out. That is me, right? So you see us sitting here because it is a partnership. It is a shared vision between propelio.com and creativecashflow.com, two separate companies that both want to make sure that you are having the ability to buy houses. If you like how I present things, you like how I teach, similarly, reward me by going and checking out creativecashflow.com. See if that's something that you guys want to become a part of, because I do a weekly live Q&A every Monday night. And I will say, I actually have my negotiation series built out, ready to go. We are, and I've been saying this for weeks, but now I actually have this in play. Our price is going to be going up significantly. Right now, it's only $650 for a lifetime membership of both Q&A and the live videos. Very soon, and the reason why I don't have a timeline is because unfortunately my tech guy is having some health issues with his parents that he's having to take care of, which is far more important than putting a website together. When that site gets, or when the negotiations get launched, our new pricing is going to be $897 for a lifetime of just the videos, but it's going to be $1297 for 1 year of the live Q&As. So if you are interested in learning from me, sign up now before I change that price from $650 lifetime to both. It'll be great for you to be able to learn.
Fred Robertson, what if the underlying mortgage company had forced insurance in place? Don't we want to replace that when we acquire with sub 2 at the time we acquire the property?
I'm not particularly interested in the extra effort that it takes to do that, personally. And the risk of the due on sale clause stuff.
Definitely have to rewatch this episode and draw everything out. That's a way to go, Jeremiah. That's a good thought process. Thank you, Kaylee, for watching. Oh, here we go, Fred. Can I get taxes trued up in escrow right away by asking for an escrow analysis, especially to true up differences in homestead, over 65, or disability exemptions?
Yep. When you ask for the homestead exemption, they are going to look at whatever the current issues are on taxes and insurance.
All right.
Am I throwing poo at y'all? What'd I do? I wonder.
I Grant throwing an emoji at us. Yeah, there we go. That's worthy of a shout out.
I hope I wasn't rude. I'm sorry.
New Orleans Jiggle. I don't know. He knows more poo. Okay.
What did I do?
Kaylee, thank you for signing up. I love it.
That's awesome, Kaylee. I can't wait to have you on the live.
Did y'all talk about the transition from seller's insurance to new buyer's insurance?
We did, yes.
So that's probably
so go back for the rewatch on that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Here we go. The amount that you are collecting for 2 months in advance of insurance payments, is that continual upfront collection for up to 2 months in advance, or just the one-time upfront?
Yeah, so the question being, do you only collect that 2 month of buffer on at closing, or do you always have a 2 month of buffer? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to take the easy road out here, because I'm probably legally obligated on some of these things on video that I'm putting out there. I'm going to take the easy road out and say I don't really know of whether or not you should or can do that in the upcoming years.
But I think that's the most Propelio way to go about it, is be authentic and not give you fake stuff.
Right. I'm also not going to tell you what I do, because I don't know. I don't know really what it boils down to.
Google it.
Google it. You know what I've been telling my staff, and well, whatever. I'm going to throw a little bit of shade. Is like people.
Wait, Grant?
People think I'm Google, man. People think I'm Google, and I went on a rant on. You saw my rant on Roughneck. People will just like constantly. My messenger is just flooded with like, "Hey, Grant, will you drop everything you're doing in your?"
But and I will save you from ranting fully on that.
Yeah.
And I will just simply say this. If that's one of your people and you have questions for Grant, you know the best place to get those answers is either A, join his mentorship program so you can have that one-on-one conversation if you want to have a one-on-one conversation, or watch the series, the hundreds of videos he's done here, and drop a comment in the YouTube comments, drop a comment in the Facebook comments.
Right.
That's how you get your questions answered. And that goes for everything across Propelio. You know, if you DM me, I'm not going to answer. Well, I'm not going to be a dick about it, but
Hopefully.
if you ask a question on a community forum where more than just you gets the answer, you're far more likely to going to get a response.
Well, for two reasons. A, it's more respectful for our time if you put it out in a community situation because somebody else may be able to answer that. If you single me out by tagging me or by, you know, shooting me a DM and want me to drop everything to answer it for you, like, why would I do, like, it's a two-way street. If I always say in negotiation, never give without get, but similarly, never get without give if you're asking for something.
The only caveat to that is if you're single. Just kidding. Just kidding. Anyway, I think we answered a lot of questions. My final thoughts on this episode is it's probably one of those things. If you're doing owner finance, if you're doing that rap game, you probably need to watch this episode one or two times. Or watch it once with a notepad, slow it down, and you know.
I like what Andrew just said. That's flattering. Thank you.
Let me pull that up. Let me see what he just said, since we were just jibber jabbing.
Yeah.
To have volume monsters point out that what appears to be little paper cuts in revenue, but which can bleed you to death, is admirable. Their losses in education in our game. I love this.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to end.
That is. Thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to tune in. Oh, I do have one final thought, actually, that I needed to get to.
Oh, shit.
We are on the final push for all this legislative stuff that you've heard me getting out about. It all comes to culminating next week. Tuesday and Wednesday of next week is the symposium. So if somebody would put in texashomeandmortgage.com, that is where you can sign up for the symposium. We're going to be in Austin March 5th and 6th. And this coming Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll be there. Mitch Stevens going to be there. Eddie Speed's going to be there. Scott Horn's going to be there. All of the beasts in the industry are going to be there. What other area do you have to go rub elbows with all of the dudes that are doing the most in this business and learn a thing or two and have the ability to make sure that legislation is getting passed in a way that is not damaging to us? Because, guys, I'm being very clear here, and you can go watch our video from 2 weeks ago if you want to know more information about this. Go 2 weeks back. It was 2 weeks ago that we did the thing with everybody up here. Go 2 weeks back and watch the announcement about the Texas 100 and the symposium coming up, because next week, on Friday, is the last day that people have to submit a bill that might go into law, okay? So next Tuesday, we're going to be learning from our lobbyists. We're going to be learning from Caroline Johnson, who's the commissioner of the Texas SML, which is a big-time thing to hear from. We're going to be learning what is going on and how we can help. Wednesday, we're going to be legitimately breaking up into groups, so you will always have somebody in your group that is experienced and knows what's going on, but we're breaking up into groups, and we are going to talk to the legislators in person, the lawmakers themselves, and say, look, guys, we're not bad apples, we're not crazy, this is what we're trying to get done. We understand you're trying to legislate out the bad apples. We're good with that. We want the bad apples gone too, but we don't want to lose viable strategies that we are using to help the consumer and to help our families make money. So please, 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 I implore you, go sign up at texashomeandmortgage.com. Show up March 5th and March 6th. We need 50 more people. We need 50 more people to show up.
I'd like to jump in on that, just because, just take it from to have access to the bigger dogs, the bigger players, you usually have to join a $15,000, $20,000, $50,000 mastermind.
Yeah.
And that's just an opportunity just to be in the right room.
Right.
Everybody else talks about being in the right room.
Yeah.
And a lot of the bigger players pay that kind of money just to weed out some of the smaller players. Not in a negative way, but just if you're
I'm in a $12,000 room for exactly that reason.
Yeah, but you want to be in a room that you can have higher level conversations versus what is sub 2, what is this, what is that, and you can get more creative. So this is an opportunity to where the only cost to you is traveling to Austin and unless you want to join the Texas 100.
It's $299 for the symposium.
Yeah, but I mean that's a very small amount of
nothing.
money. But just to be in an opportunity to be able to be in the right room and then have those breakaway groups, you know, even if you're getting started in this business and really don't know what the hell you're talking about, it's probably best just to stand there because they need people and they need bodies.
We do.
But if you're looking for an opportunity to be in the right circles, instead of hitting somebody's DMs, maybe that's the right way to go.
Absolutely. And it shows us that you're willing to fight for the industry, and we're going to be willing to pour more into you, right? So we need the help. As an industry, we need the help. We need 50 more people. Please join. I know I've been harping this real hard for past several months. This is it. This is the end. Right here.
This is it.
It's make or break this Tuesday and Wednesday. You're not going to hear me talk much about it anymore. All you're going to hear me say is if 50 of you don't show up, you're going to hear me come back and say, well, guess what, guys? Here's the stuff that we lost. Here's how we need to do.
And that's next week?
That's next week. This
So,
coming
and
week,
then
March 5th
plugging
and 6th.
Grant teaches something next week. You'll be doing live from the steps.
I'm going to go live from the Capitol or thereabouts for a short video on Wednesday of next week to let you guys know how things are going.
I know we're going really long, but I can just imagine like those old like protest videos
Yeah, right.
and like seeing Grant, the sweetest guy ever, being like confronted by a full SWAT team in riot gear. And just like, anyway, sorry.
All right, guys. So thank you guys so much. Please get involved. Please let people know about the Texas 100, the Texas Symposium that we're doing March 5th and 6th. Please get involved. Thank you for being here. I will see you guys next Wednesday. And if there's nothing else, y'all have a good one.
Oh, call back to the old shows.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan with Propelio. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. Turn on those notifications and stick around for more. We have tons of content like this all over our channel. So if you want to learn more about real estate investing, stick around, watch Propelio TV, and we'll see you later.